to this conversation now. The Commission for Gender Equality, the South African Human Rights Commission and the CRL Rights Commission have announced a joint national inquiry into South Africa's criminal justice system's response to gender-based violence and femicide, with the first phase focusing on survivors' experiences and the functioning of the justice system before cases go to trial. For more on this now, here's Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, that's Advocate Nthabiseng, Sepanya-Mogale. Advocate, thank you for your time this hour. So South Africa has had numerous inquiries, laws, as well as national plans, grand plans I'm talking about, on gender-based violence and femicide over the years, yet the crisis continues to persist. So what will make this inquiry different?
Okay. In fact, the inquiry is a response to exactly what you have said out in your opening remarks, that so much has been done, yet the problem persists. But not only does the problem persist, to a large extent, it continues to worsen. And we actually felt that the response, any response that is piecemeal, continues not to address the issue. Therefore, let us go to the bottom of it to look at the systemic issues that have resulted in this problem persisting, and try as much as possible to understand what those issues are, how they can be responded to, who needs to do what, and when they need to do it, how they need to do it.
And, Advocate, I like that you mentioned that we'll now be going down to the root cause of it all. And part of finding the root cause of it all just means that, there must be greater systems now. And I'm trying to now get a sense and a feel, rather, of how are things really looking on the ground. Just based on the Commission's work so far, where are some of the gaps occurring at this stage? Are they at police stations? Are they in forensic investigations or in victim support service? Because we've heard some of those conversations around that, particularly where victim says support is never enough. And what are some of the interventions that are needed as we're having this conversation now?
The problems lie with the entire spectrum and the entire value chain of a society that is broken and has therefore become unsafe for its members, right up to the responses that are put forward by government, as it should, when challenges occur, when violations occur. So it is the entire process and the entire value chain. That is why I was saying these are systemic problems. And, as we're saying, we have always been responding and saying, where were the police when this was happening? Why do we have such poor response, forensic services to investigate? Where are the facilities to ensure that the investigations and evidence is actually looked for, preserved and presented in court to ensure efficient and effective prosecution and the aftercare for the victims and survivors, but also proper incarceration for violators. And why I say proper, I mean incarceration that will enhance rehabilitation for people who have violated, ensure that that space that they are given to reflect on and appreciate the wrong and the damage that they have done is actually effective, so that they do not come back and offend, is actually efficient. It is the entire thing, how parole is given and all of that. So it's not just but only one, it's the entire spectrum of a responsive of how a responsive society should be and what it should do that actually is problematic.
And when you mention some of those issues, I'm keen now, just finding out about the voices that will be represented, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And from what you are telling me now, I get a sense that we will need all hands on deck. And I'm talking about at community level as well as legislation level as well. Everyone must come to the table to achieve this goal that you talk about now. If you can perhaps, Advocate, give us an overview of the inquiry itself and who will be consulted, and how it will be going about its work?
Okay. The inquiry will be in 3 phases. The first phase, we basically will be looking at the victims and survivors of violence just after violence has occurred, but we will put a context wherein of the society where this violence thrives and occurs, so that people understand that it is not a society out there that does not have an impact on me, that I cannot relate to. Each and every one of us are in that environment, either outside, in our communities, on our way to work, at work, in our homes, in our churches, everywhere. We will first start off by putting that context, and then we will then bring forward the survivors and their families to come and talk about their experiences, what actually happened, and how, if they could help, it happened. When I say how it happened, it's not the actual attack, but an enabling environment, the failures in the process that have made it possible for them, for such things to happen. For an example, municipalities need to start appreciating that dark cities, dark alleys, fells that are not taken care of are actually grounds for crime. Communities need to be able to say, even the communities that we sit in, if we do not have street lights, if we do not have streets that are friendly for us to walk to and from work, in our own homes, if we do not have a particular environment for us to feel safe, a crime of this nature will happen. And then we will then move on to speak to duty bearers to say, how then are you supposed to respond when such things happen, as opposed to how you are responding, so that we jointly identify where the gaps are? Because sometimes we tend to look at one or the other rather than everyone, to say, the police officers, what then? How are you supposed to respond? Hospitals, how are you supposed to respond? Laboratories, how is it that we've got such few laboratories? How then are we managing evidence? And during prosecution, what happens at court, the support that
and it sounds like a
survivors.
certainly well-rounded one. But I must thank you so much for your time and insights, Advocate. Thank you so much. We'll certainly will be keeping an eye out for this one. That is the Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, joining us there. Thanks so much indeed for your time.